Hello, PsychU community, and welcome to today's webinar, Interacting with First Responders. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Dr. Heather Davidson, Medical Science Liaison for Otsuka Pharmaceutical Development and Commercialization Incorporated, and I'll be serving as the moderator and presenter for today's exciting discussion featuring Master Sergeant Corey Nooner, Kathy Day, and Charlotte Anderson. So, Charlotte, at this point, I'll turn it over to you to review some of the helpful ways to communicate with first responders during a mental health crisis.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I love the opportunity because, you know, getting help throughout our life is important to our overall wellness. And yet, as we know, even then things can happen that trigger crisis. And when things do bubble up or get out of control or get dangerous, getting help is so critical for our safety and the safety of others. Crisis can be so scary and reaching out can be so difficult. However, it's also an opportunity in some ways. Crisis can be the catalyst or the opportunity to get help we may have been needing for a while. It can help us learn new skills, face things we've maybe avoided or denied, and crisis can also help create or strengthen the support team around us. Making that call is so important that we really want to cover, as Heather said, what are some of the things that you can know and do to really help ensure those positive outcomes, that people are safe, that communities are safe, that family members can see that help is being delivered. A first responder on the scene, Sergeant Nooner covers some of this. First and foremost, we'll try to de-escalate the risk. And every day, as you've heard, more officers are getting great training to help them understand and respond to mental health crisis more effectively. So sometimes, because of these skills, just talking and planning with the officer will be enough to resolve the situation and bring safety back to the forefront. However, the good thing is, if outside help is needed, officers can provide that too. They can transport people, as he mentioned, to a hospital or a crisis center, stabilization place, whatever the community resource is that's available. And they can do this voluntarily or involuntarily, simply meaning if the person at risk realizes they need help and they're willing to go, then it occurs voluntarily. But also officers do have the authority and the skills to be able to transport someone who needs the help because of safety purposes or reasons, but they are refusing to go. Some communities, fortunate communities, can even get a mental health counselor out to the scene in person or through telehealth options. A last but not least sort of option or thing to remember is that law agencies can also check on loved ones for you. And this was an option that we used fairly frequently when I was at Hotline. If you're worried about somebody and can't make contact, maybe you're not on the scene, or maybe they've called you and you live out of state, calling the local law agency and asking them, it's usually referred to as a safety or welfare check, allows somebody to put an eye on that person and then begin to use those skills we've talked about, de-escalating and helping bring safety back to the issue. When you call for help, you want to make the best use of that time. And so it helps to think of yourself as a team with the person that answers that phone. Remember, both you and that 911 call taker want to keep people safe. Both of you want the best for that individual. I think it's helpful to know how call centers work, 911 centers. Most of them use a defined set of questions to get the right help out to you as quickly as possible. And that means they usually ask, what is the address of your emergency right away? Because it's that address that lets them begin the process immediately of getting help sent out to the right location. They will ask your name and your callback phone number, even though you might not be the person at risk. And that's in case they get disconnected from you. Since these two pieces, address and callback number and name, are so critical, they will probably ask you to repeat your answers to make sure they got it right. Tell me exactly what happened is how they usually ask about your situation. Now, you may have started the call and already told them exactly what happened, but they will want to clarify, maybe even repeat this. So again, they ensure that they heard you correctly. Basically, they need to know, what are they sending help for? You want to tell them briefly what's happening, what prompted you to make the call. For example, if you're calling about yourself, you might say, I feel like I can't control my urge to kill myself today, and I know I need help. If you're calling about a loved one, maybe you describe, my son has locked himself in the bedroom and he's saying he wants to die. Or maybe you describe a female friend with you and say, she's just been sitting in this chair crying all morning. She's talking in ways that don't make sense to me and I'm scared. With that information, they will begin to ask you more questions to clarify the situation. But what's important to know is that you can say and describe all of this in addition to your details by saying, this is a mental health crisis. Put it right out there that people know they will be responding to someone who is struggling emotionally. They will also ask you for descriptions of the person in crisis. Might be height, hair color, what they're wearing. Simply answer anything they ask to the best of your ability. Those questions about description simply help them make sure that they are responding to the right person. For safety, they need to know and will ask about weapons present and about any potential that you think there is for violence. As you're answering everything as best you can, it's so important to know and realize that those questions are not slowing down their sending help. In fact, at most centers, as the call taker is getting that information from you, someone else is already reading that record and starting the process of sending help. So it can be helpful for you to ask for a CIT trained officer. If you don't remember those letters, again, just say, please send a mental health team. The dispatcher will probably already be thinking about that, but it will give more assurance to the right officers being assigned. Once all of their critical questions are answered, they may ask you just to tell them more, or you may have an opportunity to explain more things you know about the situation. It's quite likely that the call taker at 911 will also give you a few instructions as to what to do while you wait for help to arrive. Sometimes it's as simple and logistical as putting pets away so they don't interfere with the response, turning on an outside light so they can find your home, or it may be some instructions about talk calmly to the person, get a list of their medications if it's possible. And they might ask you if there's someone else available to send that person outside to meet the officer. All of this, again, is about getting the right help as quickly as possible to you. And I have a very, very important point, not on the slide, so make note of it if you have a chance, is once you call 911, we ask that you not hang up. Do not hang up until you and the call taker have finished the call. If the person calmed down and you don't think you need law enforcement anymore, or if you have to dash out for some reason, hand your phone to someone else or tell the 911 caller what is going on with you. But if at all possible, keep that line open because it's their link to getting help to you. An option that is fairly new that many people don't know about but might be something you want to consider is Smart 911. You can just look that up, Smart 911. It is an opportunity to create a profile online that allows you to put helpful information that would be important to know in an emergency. And 911 centers that participate in that can call up or have access to that information in an emergency. And to sum it up, go back to that first thought, which is, again, continue to think of yourself as you're working with the 911 call taker as part of a team, and everyone on that team is working to keep things safe and get the help that's needed to the person in crisis. So crises are scary, we know that. Emotions like panic and fear can make it so hard to think and very difficult to communicate clearly. Unfortunately, of course, that is exactly what we need to do in this phone call, is think and communicate clearly. So knowing this, I think the best advice I've ever had, and it works for me every time, is take a few deep breaths before and during your 911 call. Work to keep yourself focused, stay as calm and cooperative and as clear as you can be, and to the extent that you can allow yourself, trust that 911 call taker and the officers responding to guide you with their questions and instructions. When responders arrive, again, it can be helpful to say, thank you for coming. This is a mental health crisis. A mental health crisis helps them bring the right focus and skills to the situation. However, I think it's also important for us to know when officers respond, their goal is safety, safety for everyone involved. So they may ask you to step back or to clear out other bystanders, and they may have to do things, as that last note says, they may have to do things that are very hard for us to see, that include restraining or handcuffing a person at risk. And they do these things when and if they feel it's a must for safety purposes. Remember, it's all towards the goal of getting the right help in a desperate time. Just like with 911, first responders, those officers or other responders that come to the scene, they may have some specific questions for you. Again, it's important to try to answer as clearly as possible. And if they ask you things you don't know, just say that, I don't know, and move on to the next one. Some things they might want to know are listed here, things like medical, mental health history, diagnosis. What you want to think about is, what do I know that would help them understand and be responsive and empathic and effective with this person's behavior? How could they understand better what's going on? So medications, if delusions are a part of the crisis with that person, if there's been alcohol or drug use, as that can really change behavior. But also think about, what do you know that helps? What has helped in the past? It will often be a very delicate balance with you providing information that you know, that you want them to know, and also a little bit of stepping back to let them do their job.
So Charlotte, this is Heather. I just wanted to interject for just a quick second. The worksheet that was developed to go along with this webinar, part of that is to help you collate some of this information before you're in the crisis situation with emotions running high, as Charlotte just stated. So I just wanted to highlight there that that's really the goal of that worksheet that you can download to go with this, is to really be able to put that information together before the crisis situation so that you can communicate it clearly.
Perfect. Yep, that's exactly where we're going next. But before I talk about, if you'll go to the next slide, the resources, before I mention those, one of the questions that often comes up when we talk about providing information to 911 or to officers is some fears and misunderstandings about HIPAA. And it is important to know that once you make that call to 911, once you begin to engage officers in responding to your loved one, you've done that because of your concern about safety and because it has become a crisis or an emergency. And at those times, the same HIPAA laws don't apply to our sharing of information with local police departments or 911. So this slide is just to remind you, and Kathy's going to talk about how having this information put together in a plan and thought out beforehand is so important. But we just want to remind you of some of the big available resources to everyone. We've talked about 911, that if you feel like there's danger or threat to safety, that's your quickest link for taking action. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is a great resource if you think talking and support might help. So you or anyone can call or chat through a computer or smartphone with them to get help for yourself on any emotional stress or crisis, or for ideas on how to help a loved one. The good news is they're available 24/7 from anywhere in the U.S. They also have a specialized line to help veterans, and when you dial that 1-800-273-TALK number, the greeting message about you've reached the Lifeline will give you a prompt to hit if you want access to the veteran line. Crisis text is very similar to Lifeline in terms of the kind of help and support they provide. The difference is that it's all about text. So for people who would more comfortably ask for help through a text or get support by texting instead of talking, then Crisis Text Line is a great resource. The referral helpline is really what the name implies, and that is that it is a tremendous resource for ideas and numbers for where to get help. But it is not itself a crisis or counseling line. And then some people are surprised to know that every police department has a non-emergency line. So if you're thinking your situation doesn't warrant 911 immediate response, just make sure you know how to reach your police department through their admin line. And I'd say in closing about these resources, even about ourselves and family members, continuing to learn and improve is so important. So feedback is a very important part of that process. And I hope that if you've experienced a crisis and have that breath, afterwards, few days, weeks, whatever, take time to give some thought to and then provide some feedback. Positive feedback is very reinforcing. For people to hear you did a good job fills them and propels them to do that again and again. It shows appreciation for people who often have a thankless job. And then ideas you have about improving care are so critical because you were on the front line and saw and felt and heard. So make sure that if possible, you provide some good, responsible, helpful feedback. I just believe that together, when we work as a team, we each have a part, and when we do that part, we create a safety net that can help people get through crisis safely and get on their way to live stronger and well.